What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Scrub Investor Show. I am Buki, your host. So, unless you've been living under a rock, you are not aware that there is a massive. Seems like you can't even change any. So you can't scroll through social media without hearing about the gender war that's going on. So I don't think there's much of a need to fill people in because all you got to do is go through social media. You're gonna see between guys, passport bros, non-passport bros, guys complaining about this, and then nonetheless, on the other side, there's women complaining about guys not wanting to be men and individuals not wanting to pay the whole bills. All this nonsense. But that's not what we're going to discuss in this show. Today, we are going to discuss, honestly, the side that I don't think a lot of people are talking about, which is the danger of the gender war. And we're going to call it the recession slash depression that's about to ensue in, I'd say, in the next 10 years. And it'll, for others, for some, it'll be in the next 10 years. And for others, it'll be 20 years, 30 years. And unless we correct course, it is going to be a substantial amount of people that are going to be known as collateral damages or casualties of war, we'll call it. So, what are some of the general premise of this discussion, right? So, I started noticing this probably on social media. You've had some guys, some big content creators like Kevin Samuels, and then you also had some female content creators as well. And what you noticed was they started mentioning what what either side wanted out of the other gender or the other sex, right? But one of the key things that I noticed was no one ever talked about what happens if this doesn't get resolved. What happens? Some people touched on it, right? But they didn't really follow through it out. So, in this part one, we're going to discuss kind of what's currently going on and what it looks like in the future. So, for most people who don't understand, getting married or having a partner throughout life is a necessity, right? Because to be honest, most people are average. Like literally the term average is synonymous with like most, right? So if you think about it, most people are average. And if they don't do what's necessary, most people will not be able to make it through the end of life appropriately, right? So we'll break it down this way. Right now, currently, we're in the trenches. The war is going on. A lot of individuals, especially if you're born in the 90s or the 80s, you're in your 30s, maybe early 40s. Maybe if you're born in the 2000s, you're in your 20s. And right now, it doesn't seem that important to you. It seems it's all fun and games. It's a lot of theory. It's a lot of, oh, yeah, they're not doing this, so I'm not doing this. I'm not going to settle. That sounds well and dandy right now. But if we fast forward, let's play the 10-year game. We're going to use somebody that's currently, right now, is 35 years old or 30 years old. Let's keep it simple 30 years old. Let's fast forward 20 years for a 30-year-old, and you're in your 50s. And if you still adopt this same mentality, what are going to be your outcomes? Now, something very important to keep in mind is as you do watch podcasters speak on this issue, I want you to understand that there is a side of individuals that are podcasters that know themselves that the game is over for them. So whenever you do see you're watching something, always remember who the individual who's delivering it to you and why they're delivering it to you and what where they are. It's almost like as an investor, you don't want to take advice from someone who isn't necessarily an investor as well, right? You want someone who understands who sees money the same way as you, right? You wouldn't take advice from let's say you're looking to buy like an apartment building or something. You're not going to take advice from someone who's risk averse who says, "Oh no, I don't oh no, don't buy it because it's no." Cuz some people what you'll find is some of these podcasters they've thrown in the towel because they don't have any bargaining chips. So now they don't want to sink all by themselves. So what they're doing is they're going to drag a bunch of people down with them. So if we break it down to the mere basics, what social media has done is it has ramped up the stress level across the board for most people. we wake up, most of us, sometimes you have to remember you're grabbing your phone and you're checking social media. So it's injecting this poisonous thing in our minds. And what people don't have to understand is we are literally heading for a catastrophic event. We're heading for something that most people aren't even mentally equipped to deal with a group, not, you know, talk less by themselves. So this is going to be a time for you, whenever you're hearing these things on the podcast, I want you to really take the time to just step back from it and ask yourself, first of all, how does this affect me in my relationships currently? And ultimately, is this person speaking to me directly? And does this all apply to me? Because what you'll find is, sometimes you'll hear the from the men's standpoint that, oh, I'm just gonna be a passport bro, and I'm gonna go abroad and get married. And when I hear that, and I'm hearing the average guy listen to that, I'm hoping he's not taking that. You taking that with a massive grain of salt, because at the end of the day, you're not equipped to handle that financial burden, right? If you're making 50, 60 grand a year, you don't have the luxury of being able to go abroad and get married and come back. No, that just, you can do it, but it's not sustainable. So that's the first thing. Now, I don't know where we went off on thinking that women wouldn't have to work. Now, I'm not opposed to people not working. Whatever situation set up you guys have at your own house is great. But most women will have to work. This is the way the world is set up now, right? You're not going to make it off of one income. Most people won't be able to make it off of just one income. Most families won't be able to make it off of just one income. So it's just one of those things where people have to understand that if you're asking for something ridiculous, are you willing to live with the outcomes if they don't happen? If you're willing, if your claim to fame is going to be you're going to be a passport bro, are you willing to hold out until you make enough money? But if you never do, are you willing to deal with the consequences of that, right? Or if you're the person who has to marry someone who's going to let you stay or allow you to stay home and you never have to work and they're going to be able to provide, if you aren't what that person is looking for, are you willing to deal with the consequences? Because here's the catch. What you'll find is individuals will make excuses and say, and just blame it on a blanket statement like it's the government, it's supremacy, it's this and that. When in actuality, you're making those decisions right now. And 20 years from now, if you choose not to make the right decision, you will face those consequences. What do those consequences look like? Well, good question. I'll tell you. We already know, right? Like, if you think about it right now, we are facing some of the most stressful situations. Now, let's just be honest. We haven't even begun to see the stress unfold. People are just now starting to understand how much stress they're under. And it's only going to get worse because social media is only going to it's going to double down. We're going to consume it more. And also, think about it, the more stress you're on, unless you had great coping mechanisms, you're probably not in better health. Cortisone levels go up, weight increases, and then you get the potential for other comorbidities. So, I'm sorry, the potential for other diseases. I don't want to get too medical or technical, but the point is, people aren't considering these factors when they're making these claims. And to be honest, most people think they're settling. No, you need to settle your ass down somewhere with somebody else. You're not settling. You are surviving. Like, the necessity for us to couple up is unreal. Like, most people need that. Now, of course, this is just the part one, and this is just kind of introducing the idea. But people need to understand that if you do not, if you do not couple, if you do not try to make peace as quickly as you can from your point of view, just understand. I'm not saying everyone's going to be saved. There's no way. In every single war, there's always going to be casualties of war, right? But in this situation, both male and female have the ability to to be able to make themselves not be the casualties of war. To be honest, if you don't do it, you will have to work later on in your life because you will not have the money for retirement. And this is something that people aren't talking about. They're just thinking about it like, oh, I don't need a man, or oh, these women are. Knock yourself out having that conversation. But when you start to lose, when you start to lose, just don't blame anybody else. Don't blame the government. No. Now, some of these things might have been. We're not saying anything because they're not censoring it. But you are right now in the midst of this battle, and you aren't thinking outside. Forget everybody else. Be selfish for once and think, okay, what do I need to do to win? Now, of course, I do think there are some individuals that are buffered from this, right? And that's kind of what we'll talk about in part two. The individuals that are buffered, we'll look at it from a men's side, we'll look at it from a women's side as well, and then we'll look at it like what you can do. And ultimately, as an investor, what are potential opportunities? Because guess what? Some of those casualties of war, I hate to say it, will be a working force later on, right? Because if you just kind of getting into some of the stuff we'll talk on in the part two and part three, is if you think about it, we are now experiencing some of the lowest birth rates, right, across the globe. So what is that going to mean? That's going to mean that individuals are going to have to work later into their age. Now, if I'm not mistaken, they're increasing the age for Medicare. I think that's what happened in France, and that's why they were kind of they were rioting. Look, people, the gender war sounds great, but save yourself because guess what? If not, you will be working into your late ages, and you will not have anybody to blame for this but yourself. So stay tuned for part two, and until next time, peace.